What was life like for a slave during the Viking Age? It has been estimated that around the year 1000, 1/3 of the population here in Norway consisted of slaves. When we think about the Vikings, we tend to think about those people who went raiding and plundering and discovering new lands, sailing across the seas. But that life was not an option for most people in Scandinavia during the Viking Age. Slaves did not have property rights. They did not have voting rights at the Ting, which was a form of local democracy. They could be treated poorly. They were not protected by the laws like a free man or a free woman would have been. Children would be born into slavery, and it would be very difficult to get out of slavery and become a free person. Almost impossible if you were a woman, I would say. And women who lived as slaves could be mistreated horribly, without consequence. Now, we don't really have much evidence to support what I'm saying here, actually, because slaves were not seen as important. There are some people in the sagas who were born of a slave woman, so to speak, and who became, who rose in society. But apart from that, slaves were not seen as essential as the free men in Viking society. Now, some people would say that you shouldn't really compare slavery during the Viking Age in Scandinavia with, for instance, slavery in North America and the transatlantic slave trade and all of that. But I would argue that, yes, that is probably true, and I agree with that, but it was still cruel. It's still a very dark part of Scandinavia's past. Oh no, I stepped in something disgusting. What is this? Let's see what it says. AI. Yeah. If you have been following my channel for a while, you have heard me saying the following words. You will never see AI here on this channel. That's a promise. And by the way, my name is Bjorn, and I'm a historical novelist living here in Norway. So, when we look at slavery as being part of society, we start seeing that not only were the slaves dependent on their, dare I say, master, their owner, and the free people in that community, but also the free people were dependent on them. So I would guess that treating your slaves poorly was very unwise. So while it probably happened, I will guess that it was not common to treat the slaves poorly. We can assume that the difference between a free person and a slave in Scandinavia during the Viking Age was not as significant as, for instance, slavery in North America. And as I mentioned, look at these autumn colors. It's well, it's the end of October actually. And soon all the leaves will be on the ground. Soon all the trees will be standing naked, if you will, except the firs and the spruce trees, of course. We have some evidence that slaves were killed and buried with their master. Even though we're still discussing this somewhat, but at the Oseberg ship it was a woman burial, but next to one of the women there was another woman, and she was of Asian origin, and we are guessing that maybe she was the slave or slave/companion to the other woman. Slaves could become free. They could gain their freedom, and they could do so by paying or participating in raids and war and so on. When it comes to paying your way to freedom, we know that Erling Skjalgsson, who was a very powerful figure, and he basically, during most of his lifetime, he ruled the west of Norway. He was not the king, but he ruled the west of Norway. And he would let slaves become free men. But in order to do that, they had to pay him. They had to work the land, and basically he was introducing a feudal system. And I would guess that he didn't do that out of the kindness of his heart. He saw it as profitable. That's my guess. Now, there's a lot of guessing here in this video, and it was a little bit difficult to prepare, because there aren't really that much evidence or documentation when it comes to the slaves during the Viking Age. We know that they took slaves, they raided other places and they took slaves. They also took slaves in Scandinavia to some extent. But apart from that, we don't know so much about the lives of the slaves, because if I didn't mention so already, they were not seen as that important. Slaves were exempt from joining the leidang and the fylking. What that means is that they did not have to participate in the obligatory defense forces. Now, a fylking is basically just a gathering of people who will defend an area, and the leidang is a system of defense, local defense along the coast. And slaves were not expected to be part of that. But I will say, again, we don't know this for sure. We don't know. Because if the slaves did participate, they would probably not have been mentioned unless they did something very heroic. Now, before I continue with this video here, could I ask you to consider subscribing to this channel? With the threat of AI slop, especially AI slop in the history segment here on YouTube, your help matters. If you click on that subscribe button and you watch this video, it helps a lot. So please do consider that, and I promise to bring you videos every Saturday, and there will be no AI, and they will be authentic and real. So thank you. Now, in my novels you will meet a woman called Frøydis, and she is the daughter of Eric the Red and a slave woman, and she actually lived. She's a historical person, and she led an expedition to North America So you could say that she was only 50% slave, but still it must have been difficult. And I often think about these people who were born into difficult situations, you could say. They didn't really start out with the best cards, but still they managed, and they rose in society, and they did incredible things. It tells us a lot about human spirit. It tells us a lot about what we are capable of.